Welcome back to Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. It is AEW Dynamite review from last night. Yes, last night. It was Thursday. Is Thursday at the time of recording anyway. It'll probably be Friday before you lovely people on YouTube and Spotify see it. But you will be able to hear some dulcet tones of someone who is joining us again for the podcast. He's been fixing boilers, doing everything, getting ready to basically make Britain warm for the winter. It is my bro Chacho, Mr. Dave Robinson, the problem child. Hello, mate.
Hey mate, how you doing?
I am good, my man. How is life in boiler country?
Oh, so everyone just needs to calm down a bit and
Calm
stop
down.
putting the boilers. Oh, it's not that cold, man. It's not that cold.
Not
We
yet.
we're busier than the temperature, yeah, dictates at the minute.
Well, mate, you know, they say it's always better to be busy than to have no work at all, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it ends
shouldn't
and
trouble.
means. Ends
Better
and
to have
means.
too much than not enough.
Exactly that. Ends justify means and all of that stuff, mate. It's always good. But always good to have you on here as well, chatting some AEW. I have been chatting to our AEW analyst, Gary Joe, of a weekend, doing some the collision stuff and WrestleDream, which was last week. But we just wanted to get your initial thoughts actually on WrestleDream and obviously more of the back end of that with the full-time departure of the Bryan Danielson.
I thought WrestleDream was a great show.
Mm.
Enjoyed it from start to finish. I really, really loved the ending because it wasn't necessarily what we were expecting.
No.
Um, And it kind of made everything make sense in terms of Danielson and the match against McGuinness
Yeah.
because he was clearly, he did need that surgery. You got to a point with Danielson and you don't know what didn't know when he was really injured or when he was just selling because he's so good at it.
Yeah.
But it's clear that he does need that time. His full-time career was very much coming to an end. And I loved how, it was in his hometown and it was like absolute heartbreak, and then the beatdown after.
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying the little vignettes with Moxley,
Mm.
generally getting him at the start of Dynamite. Um, I think Marina Shafir is awesome in that role. I think she's been really, really good. And I think I'd probably got to the point with Marina Shafir where I wasn't sure it was going to happen for her in AEW. But obviously Moxley sees a lot in her and fully justified her position in the group because she looks like a badass. Um, Pack is right where he should be, right in the middle of something, significant. I think RJ City has been writing this story. I think
Yeah.
he's been contributing a lot of ideas and content to it, and it's really captivating. Was kind of expecting maybe a bit of a reveal, but it seems like that's gonna play out a bit longer in terms of Moxley's intentions and whether he's acting on anyone's behalf and whether there's anybody else involved. But I thought the ending to the show was fantastic. I thought the pay-per-view was brilliant. Um, Disappointed in terms of I'm good to see that Danielson is retiring because he's just been he's one of the greatest of all time. But I'm sure we'll get him back in some multi-man matches when he's fit and healthy. And we haven't seen the last of him yet.
No, I think there's definitely more to come with the way that ended. But you made a good point with Marina Shafir. It's definitely a case of this totally fits her character, her persona, even her background, obviously, as a mixed martial artist, being in the group with Moxley and Pac and Yuta, obviously, and Claudio. It just feels like a match made in heaven for Marina Shafir. And perhaps, like you said, it wasn't going to happen, but with Moxley being so high on her, it may have just happened to be playing that waiting game, and right now that waiting game has paid off because it fits everything for her.
Absolutely. I think he spoke on Renee's
Yeah,
podcast
he
a
did.
while ago, probably 18 months ago,
Yeah,
um, saying how impressed he was with her. And it was probably a name that people weren't expecting him to throw out when Renee asked him,
mm,
who do you see with as promising prospects for the company? But she's repaying that now. I think she just looks just the way she walks to the ring as well through the crowd with him.
mm.
Um, I think she's doing a great job. We haven't seen her in terms of match, I suppose.
No,
But I just love the way she's like an enforcer.
yeah.
She is. Yeah, as you just said, quite rightly, like the perfect role for her. I think this is the best. Uh, Moxie's had a great career, when we talk about the Shield and,
Mm.
everything that he's done in the industry, but I'm hard pushed to think of when I've been more impressed by Moxley than right now. He just looks elite. He just looks at the very highest level of his game.
Indeed, he does. Why do you think like? Because obviously the Shield, it was kind of Seth and Roman were kind of that it felt as if there was this gap between Seth Roman and Moxley and the Shield. You could kind of say yeah, Roman's the kind of or Rollins is the top guy, Roman's and then there was Moxley. What changed? What has changed? Do you think that obviously he's grown older, AEW, he's gone to AEW, but as you say, he now seems to be like the main man. What do you think has changed in him, or perhaps is it just the change of company and him being able to be maybe more like himself than maybe portraying a character like Dean Ambrose?
Yeah, I think he's just stopped second guessing himself, and he's just got so good at portraying the John Moxley character. I think the style of wrestling in the company, the target demographic, I think that probably
Hmm.
helps as well. But even in his time in AEW, he was always been a top guy, a main eventer, world champion 3 times. But this is the first time that he's held the title that I really see him as a step above everyone else, like the true leader, the guy like the Roman Reigns in WWE that he's just head and shoulders above, and him as champion now, I think he's got a long title run in him. I know we've got Christian's got a shot at some point, and we're going to get number one contenders back and forth, and there's going to be more with Darby Allin, I'm sure. But I don't see Moxley losing that title for a long time. I think he's going to hold it certainly for the rest of this year. I really do. He's going to establish himself as yeah, 4-time world champion. But as I say, this is his big run. I think this is his defining world title run in the company.
I think so. And looking forward to seeing what's next for him. And you're right, he kicked off Dynamite in the back of a truck. And he's going to burn down a forest to plant a new one, according to my notes, is what he said. He's not sentimental. He can see the future. If you want to come with, then come on. What is the new paradigm? It's simple. You work for Moxley now, which is the way that Dynamite started with that. And that was actually really cool. And it brought us to another return, a returning face, one that we're very happy to see back. That of Adam Cole, baby. We know, well, from what we hear, that apparently out, splitting up with Britt Baker. We don't necessarily know that's true, but that's the rumors that's been going around. And he was, kind of moving away from the kingdom. Now, there's a bit more than that because obviously Maria Kanellis has come out with her contract stuff, and I don't know if that affects Mike Kanellis or anything else. But he's going back to himself, so kind of disbanding, and I suppose kind of ending the Devil's storyline to a degree because he had his people around him, Wardlow and everybody else, which I'm guessing now is they're going to go their own way. But he's still focusing on MJF, although it is a massive role reversal from when the Devil come back. It was Adam Cole's the heel, now MJF is the heel. MJF was not going to basically said he's going to keep on. I think he's still filming at this point, but he's going to keep on dangling the carrot, but he's never going to get the opportunity to wrestle him, according to MJF. Now we know, quite frankly, he is going to get that opportunity at some point. Uh, does it kind of, I don't know, because obviously they've had to twizzle this storyline around a little bit. The Devil, I think the Devil stuff was so great that the injuries just killed it, literally. And I'm guessing this is just AEW's way of keeping the two main people in that feud, but just resetting it and probably resetting it in the right way because MJF is a far better heel than he is a face.
Yeah, yeah. And Adam Cole has been great in his career in both the babyface
Yeah.
role and as a heel, but up against MJF. MJF's one of the best heels in the business. Um, Probably too soon to say of all time, but you could certainly in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, look back at his career and perhaps, he'll be one of the all-time greats. So I do like that. They've obviously had plans for this match, this feud, a long time ago, and they've revisited it, and there's a lot of water gone under the bridge from between then and now. Um, but they've kind of got the trying to get this train back on the tracks. And whether we'll see it at full gear, I'm not sure. Where they might play it a little bit longer, as you say, depending on Max's commitments in terms of films and recordings. Um, but I thought this promo for Adam Cole was very good. They did the best they could with it, given the
Yeah.
circumstances. I mean, they didn't even mention Wardlow. He kind of did
No.
mention the Kingdom and Roddy.
Mhm.
Wardlow didn't get a mention. I'm not sure if he's injured at the minute. I'm not sure what's going on with him. But yeah, probably best to leave all that United or no
Yeah.
Undisputed Kingdom in the rear view and get because this is a top match. This is a top feud, top story in terms of MJF Adam Cole. That's a big deal. That's a big match for AEW.
Yeah.
So they're doing the best they can with it, given everything that happened and the reasons why it couldn't happen previously. So I thought Adam Cole was great. I really enjoyed MJF's bit as well. Whether that was pre-recorded or I don't think it was a live feed, was it? I think it was
No.
pre-recorded. But yeah, very good and a great way to kick off the show.
It was indeed. And just before we get onto, I just wanted to ask you a question because it was something that we talked to Gary Joe about. The TV deal finally inked with
Yeah,
AEW now for and obviously it garnered a lot of attention online, and I think Tony Khan is from what I'm reading is now trying to kind of expand on using that kind of profit money that they're going to be earning and expanding internationally. For number one, is that what do you make of the TV deal and obviously how good of a news it is? But number two, is it important now that he does? Perhaps not necessarily use that money on roster because I think the roster's kind of there. Yes, there'll be a few people moving and leaving and maybe the odd one or two coming in. But is the international market now something that he really needs to focus on to kind of like take into the next 5 years, for example, just so when it comes to the renegotiation of stuff, they're in a better position than what they was when they re-signed the deal.
definitely. Yeah, I think the the fact that in the UK it's on free to air television in
Yeah,
terms of ITV. It's garnered a huge following over here, and being able to book the two Wembley shows is evidence of that. I know the attendance was a lot lower this year than the first year. It was always going to be, but there were restrictions anyway because of the Taylor Swift stuff.
yeah,
So there's obviously much more potential in the UK for a tour, even a few weeks, a few back-to-back
yeah.
Dynamites and Collisions or, another show. I know we get in Forbidden Door, but then you got Mexico as well, and you've got the CMLL
Mhm.
connection and the working relationship there. You've got the working relationship with New Japan. So there's a lot that they can be doing very much different to WWE, very much different to TNA. They've got a hardcore fan base, but they've got potential to grow that fan base as well and do the crossover shows, do like the not so much the invasion stories, but go through the Forbidden Door and give us all some incredible matches. And as you say, I think the roster for me doesn't need a great deal.
No.
I think Lashley's probably coming in.
Yeah,
Uh,
we'll get into that. Yeah, he will be.
and obviously Danielson's out now, but you got Omega to come back at some point. We've heard his name being dropped a few times, so
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me if we get him back before the end of the year. Um, you got Powerhouse Hobbs in the background as well. Wardlow looks like Brian Cage has got a new direction. Lance Archer's got new direction.
Finally.
So yeah, yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, the roster that Shelton Benjamin will get to his match. I
Mhm.
was really impressed with Shelton. Coming out at 49 years old and putting on that performance against Leo Rush, really kind of reminding us what he can do. So I think the company's in a really good position. The TV deal is obviously fantastic news for the long term, prolonged success of the company. I think we'll be getting some tweaks to I think Rampage is going.
Yes. So it's
Might
Battle of the Belts.
yeah, so maybe a bit of streamlining, but as you say, I think those international markets are paramount to the success. I think all wrestling companies really
Yeah.
kind of realize that more so in the post-COVID era, that there's just so many um, so many international fans that want more live wrestling in their countries and in their cities. And, you get, I know it's logistically, it's a big challenge for companies, but, they've done a real good job of it in terms of the two London shows, the two Wembley shows, and I think they'll expand on that even more. So they've got Australia, haven't they,
Yeah,
in
Grand Slam.
as
Yeah.
well? So yeah, I think that will be key to the strategy in growing the company.
Yeah, I think they're going to do something with Rev Pro next year. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some
Yeah.
sort of link up. I mean, there is kind of an agreement, I suppose, in place because we've seen it already before, but I wouldn't be surprised if something's maybe bubbling between those two. Well,
Yeah.
maybe something be announced. But anyway, it is great news for AW, and it just puts that narrative to bed that they're not going to be around because they are, and it's great. And as I said to Gary Joe, it's not just a win for AW, it's a win for wrestling, and it's a win for wrestlers who don't quite fit that WWE mold of a superstar and want to actually perhaps not have those, you can't do that kind of thing. You have to work a certain way and stuff like that. It gives the wrestlers that actually don't want to work that way, or the skill set that they have doesn't, wouldn't suit it to work that way. So it's a win-win, and it's certainly a win for wrestling. And I can't wait for another 5 years of AEW and 5 years of podcast with you about it.
That's it. And those options for the wrestlers, those options for the fans as well.
Yeah.
There'll be fans that watch everything. There'll be fans that flip back and forth to different stuff. I went through a period earlier on in the year I was watching a lot more WWE than I had been in
Mm.
recent times, just because of how good the product had been. I think in terms of the wrestlers, like you say, sometimes the style. I think of somebody straight away like a Kyle O'Reilly or even a Mark Briscoe.
Yeah.
I think AEW is absolutely a perfect fit for them in terms of how they present themselves, how they wrestle, their character work. Um, you look at somebody like Rob Van Dam, who's on a Legends contract with WWE, but we've seen him recently teaming with Hook
Yeah.
in AEW. And I think that freedom to go even like to and from companies, I think of Naomi
Yeah.
went over to TNA and then she's back in WWE.
Hmm.
The, the they don't there doesn't seem, and it's probably Triple H is and Tony Khan at the forefront of it, but they don't seem to take it personally. If there's an opportunity for wrestlers to go elsewhere and come back, the door seems like it's always open
Mm.
as long as business is done in the right way and it's respectful and there's no, bashing the opposition and stuff. It just seems like a good time in the world of wrestling right now. Um, the landscape in general.
Mm.
So long may it continue, really. And I think it's great for the fans. I think it's great for the wrestlers. And yeah, great news that AEW is not going anywhere.
Yeah, definitely so. We do have before the first match. We do have Chris Jericho, and he's going to go next week. They set up a match next week, a ladder match for the Ring of Honor World Championship with Mark Briscoe for next week. I'm worried. I am really worried that next week we're going to have another World Championship around the waist of Chris Jericho. I hope I'm wrong, because he keeps referencing obviously Mark's
Never.
brother
Mm.
Jay, who's no longer with us, unfortunately. They're not going to put it on him next week, are
They are, mate. Yeah, they are. A lot of them
they?
resigned to it. Yeah, the fact that Briscoe picked up the win in the first match, I can't imagine that Jericho goes back to back losses, whether there's a new branch to the learning tree or whether somebody within the conglomeration turns on Briscoe. I think one way or another, Jericho is going to be, unfortunately, walking out with that title. I am a little bit down on Jericho at the minute. I really enjoyed the learning tree stuff initially.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
but I don't know. I'm just a bit sick of him. I'm just a bit sick of him at the minute again. Yeah, I think he needs to disappear for a bit and come back, but that seemingly isn't going to happen.
Funny enough,
Uh,
Gary Joe said the same thing.
yeah, and as I say, I have really it's really been entertaining. It's been funny. But I don't know. I'd like to see more of Big Bill and Brian Keefe, and Brian Keefe just seems to be in matches to be the person that gets pinned, and I
Yeah.
think I think there's more. And maybe he's got to pay his dues a bit and do his time in AEW and push on later on. But Yeah, I'd rather see more of them two than Jericho, to be honest. So I think Jericho will be taking the title. Whether then he's on AEW TV a little bit less and he's on Ring of Honor a bit more, I don't know, but I don't think he was in his previous Ring of Honor title reign.
No.
I don't think he appeared more in the Ring of Honor product. So yeah, I think that's the way it's going, mate.
Let's hope not. Let's hope somehow, some way it doesn't happen. You mentioned Brian Keith and Big Bill, and you did mention the bring really big Brian Keith was the one to take the pin, and it's exactly what happened with the match with FTR at the start. Look, it's a perfectly acceptable tag match, to be honest.
Yeah.
FTR obviously got the clean and quite an impressive victory over them, kind of re-cementing themselves back into the division. Now, there is a side note to this that the Outrunners, who are mine and Gary Joe's favorite tag team at the minute in AEW. They did come out to celebrate with FTR. I do wonder though, how long before FTR and the Outrunners are actually going against each other. I'm really high on the Outrunners at the moment. I know that they're quite big merchandise sellers as well, and generally that bodes well if you're making the company money. Are you an Outrunner, Dave?
I'm an outrunner, and I don't think I was going to bring this point up as well. Matter of time before FTR turned on them.
Yeah,
Matter of time. I think that's the way they'll go rather than the other way. I think
yeah,
everyone's popular at the minute. Um, they've really their vignettes are very different as well. They're
yeah,
like the 80s style. We had the gym workouts with FTR, which was entertaining.
yeah.
But I think we will see. I think it's going to be short-lived in terms of Cash Wheeler donning the sunglasses and dancing a bit. I think it's going to get very serious very soon. And yeah, whether Full Gear's the kind of place that we'll see that match, or whether they'll stretch it out a little bit longer and see. I think World's End is after.
Yeah, yeah, we've got
Yeah.
the C2 in between, haven't we?
Yeah, so maybe it's towards the end of the year we'll get that and we'll get a bit of a slower burn. But yeah, I think FTR are going to re-establish themselves as the top tag team. And I think they'll be doing it as heels. They've had a nice little run as faces,
Hmm.
very popular with the crowd. They're always popular because of how good they are, but I
Yeah,
think we see that mean streak and that real heelish side, and I think they'll be doing a lot of good work with the Outrunners.
indeed. In fact, if you ever catch an interview of Demolition, you'll hear what Demolition think of FTR
Yeah.
as well. So go and check that out. Speaking of some, well, you kind of mentioned about a heel turn and potentially one coming up. The Acclaimed were backstage with Daddy Arse, and they were interrupted as they were going on by MVP. MVP coming in with Shelton Benjamin. And gave the cards to Matt Caster. Well, actually, gave the cards out. Anthony Bowen's not seemingly interested. Max Caster puts the card in his pocket. Well, I mean, obviously, at the moment, the Hurt Business seem to be going after everybody in terms of wanting them to join the Hurt, or sorry, the Hurt Business, the Hurt Syndicate wants to join everyone. But does it make sense for someone like Max Caster, who has been in a tag team for so long? Who perhaps, no disrespect to Anthony Bowens, but he's the probably the one of the two that if you would put them as singles, I kind of see Bowens with the one that would always give you the good match, but will probably end up losing it. Caster's just got that attitude and the swag and obviously the rapping that he can do. Does it make sense for Max Caster to join the Hurt Syndicate, or do you think the Acclaim still have legs as a team?
I don't know if you remember, I predicted going into it all in that I thought that there was gonna be a turn and they were gonna
Yeah,
break up. I still think that's gonna happen very soon. I think Max Caster's got himself in phenomenal shape.
yeah.
Um, Anthony Bones has always been, you know, pretty jacked, but Caster's really kind of trimmed down.
Mm,
Uh, and he's the fact that he always calls himself the best wrestler alive, and he's got that, and he's part of a team. That for me was a sign that there was going to be a singles running it on his horizon. But I also think Anthony Bowens, in his own right, is got the potential to be a
mm.
great single star. But as you say, out the two, perhaps AEW think that Caster's the guy that could go on to be a top star for them, given his charisma, given his mic skills and his rapping and everything else, as well as being a great wrestler. So. Yeah, interesting one. Interesting one again. I don't think that's going to be something that's going to happen instantly.
No,
think a lot of they're planting a lot of seeds, and I think there'll be a number of guys that join MVP. Um, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Max Caster's one of them.
quite interesting how you could end up sort of having a blood and guts with like the Hurt Syndicate having five, what Max Caster being one, and then perhaps Swerve having the other side and Anthony Bowens going
Yeah.
that way. I mean, we're way away from blood and guts yet, and obviously there's other stuff that we'll talk about that could go on. But that it's an interesting one. We'll wait and see what happens there. My favorite wrestler was next, Mercedes Moné against Queen Animator. Look, it was fine. The match was fine. It was unspectacular. One thing I was glad is Mercedes has been trialing a new finisher. I'm glad that she didn't try on Animator on this one. She just kind of made a tap to, the statement maker. Look, to be honest with you, man, like the quicker they get the title off of her, I mean, and again, talking to Gary Joe a lot about this, he's in agreement with me. He's not been the biggest fan of Mercedes Moné's run. Um,
No.
I'm just at a point now where I, to be honest, she basically comes in and dances. And I said this so many times, I feel as if she's literally robbing a living off of AEW. I'm still in that. Nothing has made me believe otherwise at the minute. What what is the difference here between the Sasha Banks that we saw in the WWE that, could it just be that she suits WWE better than AEW, or was it the fact that Stephanie Vaquer and people like that, we kind of found out that she perhaps maybe isn't as good as what we thought she was?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It has been pretty underwhelming, and it's just a bit forced in terms of putting the title on her so soon. Um, in a positive comment, I really think that Camille looks great as her muscle and as a kind of backup.
Yeah.
Um, you probably could say that is she wasted in that role?
Yes.
Is she a star in her own right?
Yes.
Um, yeah, but I've enjoyed the interactions with her.
Mm.
Um, Queen Aminata, very, very talented, but we
Yes.
never expected her to be picking up the winner. It kind of went the way that we expected it to go.
Yeah.
But using the bank statement or the statement maker over that god awful finish that she's been using, I was pleased with that. I was pleased
Yeah.
with, she's gone back to using that submission. It's a much better finisher. Um, did you say the match was okay? Didn't really expect much in terms of title change or anything like that. Um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they can do to kind of get us invested in Mercedes. Um, I don't know. She's capable of great things. She's capable of great matches. Um, just seems a bit forced to me. I don't know. People have levied the accusation that she's like kind of not in it for the right reasons. Um, and it's was reported about how much money she was earning and stuff
Mm.
like that. So maybe that kind of influences our attitude towards her as well a little bit if we don't think she cares as much as, some of the girls that have been there from day one and haven't really had the opportunities that she was kind of
Yeah.
handed pretty much as soon as she walked into the company.
Mm.
So yeah, maybe that's part of it as well.
Maybe we'll see what happens anyway with her. And yes, Camille's wasted in that pin there. I've known Camille I've watched Camille for a long while now in NWA, and I know that she's definitely when she breaks away and carves her own career, she's going to be amazing as long as they use her in the obviously
Um,
way.
and maybe long term that that's the idea. And when we've got Camille against Mercedes, maybe that's
Yeah.
the story that we really get invested. And you know, Camille shows us, that she's the future of the women's division in AEW because we haven't really seen her compete much, have we? I
Couple of
think
matches on Rampage, isn't it? Really.
that's it. That's it. So the best is definitely yet to come, but I'm really looking forward to her becoming a star.
Me too. Me too. And well, her resurfacing the fact that she is a star. But yes,
Yeah.
obviously, from my point of view, I've seen enough of her to know. But yeah, in your case, to show her what a star that she actually is. We talked about potential heel turn for Max Caster, which is quite interesting now because we're going to talk Private Party. They want their rematch with the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks pretty much ain't going to, they said there was a last chance at the titles recently, and then quite interestingly, Stokely Hathaway recently split up with Statlander, at storyline wise, basically come out and said, look, everyone really knows that Isaiah is the main star of the group of this of Private Party. Are we like, because Private Party and Acclaimed, kind of two of the ones that have been there from the word go. Tag team division right now in AEW is very strong in areas. I don't know. Does splitting up Private Party make sense? And is Stokely right? Is Isaiah or Zay or whatever he's saying, is he the main draw for Private Party?
Yeah, it's kind of that comment caught me by surprise because I hadn't really suspected that they would be breaking up at any point, or I thought they would be a long-term tag team. Whereas with Max and Anthony, as I said a few
Mm,
months ago, I do expect that they'll become single stars.
yeah.
I thought Private Party, similar to the Young Bucks, would be a tag team. If forever is probably a bit of a stretch, but long term. Um, but yeah, that was interesting. Nice little wrinkle there as well with Stokely getting involved, and there's a lot of that. They've used managers well in AEW, a lot of
Mm,
factions, a lot of managers, um, but there's a lot of interesting things they can do, particularly when it comes to tag teams, and when it comes to tag teams as well that have got the history with the Young Bucks, and they just aren't able to get that big win for the titles. I thought it was a bit weak in terms of the segment. They basically just said we want a rematch. I
yeah.
thought that was a bit route one. Um, Perhaps we see them self-establish themselves as number one contenders again after losing the match
Yeah.
at WrestleDream. Um, but I've got to say that match at the pay-per-view was sensational. There
Yeah.
was some spots in that match that I'd never seen before. I think the book showed just why they will go down as one of the greatest tag teams ever. Um, particularly the modern era. I think they get a lot of hate at times, the Young Bucks, but I think they're phenomenal. Always have. So creative, so entertaining. Um, what I'm saying is I've got absolutely no problem at all with Private Party having a rematch, given the match that we got at the pay-per-view.
Yeah.
But I want a little bit more story than, I know we lost, but give us another chance. Um, but yeah, in terms of Zay and a singles run, we have seen him in
Yeah.
singles matches. We saw him along with Matt Hardy. We saw him. One of the memorable ones for me, who was on the receiving end of it, was Keith Lee when he came in and threw him across the ring. So when you kind of think back to that and you think of Zay becoming a singles star, you would say unlikely, but he's definitely charismatic. And yeah, they're obviously see a lot of potential for him in the company.
Yeah, we do. We'll see what happens. It's an interesting one, to say the least. And one that's going to come a bit out of left field, but one that perhaps has been reset with obviously the fact that Jimmy Jacobs has left the creative side of it now. And there's a lot. I mean, just as everyone, when somebody leaves creative, there's always, oh, he didn't like this man, he didn't like that man, and it kind of always thinks they always do the low hanging fruit. Like everybody loves this wrestler, so when he leaves, he didn't like that particular wrestler. It was kind of like that, but it feels as though we're resetting a little bit with AEW, and perhaps they're now you've kind of come off the back of a few storylines. Obviously, new creative coming in. It does feel like now they're just hitting that reset button, starting again with some people, and it's working a little bit to be well. It's actually working a lot, not a little bit, but it's actually really good for them to actually just take a step back and go, right, okay, let's now plan with the creative people he's got with him, and let's actually make it meaningful, which they are, but also throw some little new things in, like little bits that we've just seen there with the potential breakups of the Acclaimed and Private Party, and also the addition to the Don Callis family and Jake Roberts, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah, yeah, we've had a reset for a lot of characters, guys that have been there a long time,
Yeah,
and perhaps we haven't seen them in prominent positions in the company. When we saw that segment that's coming up with the Don Callis family, those four guys standing there behind Don, I thought that looked like an impressive sight. And you've got Powerhouse Hobbs as well, that's going to be back at some point. So when he rejoins that faction, which I'm sure he will,
Well, he
you
might
know,
not be joining that faction.
oh, okay, you know something I don't.
I'll tell you in a minute. Get to it.
But you got Mark Davis as well. I mean, we've got Carl Fletcher coming, like really established himself as a top singles guy in
Mm.
the company. But he's always been part of a tag team, so
Yeah.
there's stuff there. One thing I want to touch on, and we haven't mentioned him, but a guy that I see a lot of potential within the company and some new direction, and perhaps establish himself as more of a star. Very popular, Juice Robinson.
Yeah.
I think. I think the reactions that Juice gets would not surprise me at all if we start seeing him in a few more main events and picking up some big wins and perhaps part of the C2 potentially.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the C2 is right around the corner. I'm looking forward. And obviously, Juice Robinson is no relation to Dave Robinson, just for those people that are thinking it may
Present
be a
tense.
family thing. Yeah. But no, agreed. He's been great. And it's great to see him back. Obviously, he had that long-term injury as well. So it was good when he come back. And we'll get into that in a bit more detail. Obviously Jay White and that's got a match on AEW this week, which we'll get into. We wasn't finished with the Elite, though. They did kind of wish Kenny Omega a happy birthday. They had a birthday cake, which Jack Perry threw meat over. Okada said happy birthday, bitch, which is seemingly Okada's favorite word. And basically, Jack Perry said, get well soon or die. He doesn't care, which was quite a harsh way to end it, but kind of makes it because the Bucks are going back to New Japan in January, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of teasing of the Golden Lovers reuniting, so that could be where it all kicks off with that. It may kick off on AEW. I've already thought AEW to want something to have happened before it happens in New Japan, but we'll wait and see. But it sets us up nicely for the Conglomeration versus the Elite, which was an actually really good match. We didn't get a finish to it though, because there was a lot going on, and all of a sudden, Wheelie, everyone from the Mox, I don't know if you call them the Blackpool Combat Club anymore, I don't know. They just went crazy in this match and they were starting to take out everybody. The Elite then moves out and just kind of lets them beat up everyone from the Conglomeration, and which was quite interesting because it's like obviously Top Flight come out as well, sorry, into this as well. And it's quite an interesting one how the Elite just basically went out the back and said it's none of their business. And Garcia and Private Party show up and they get into a little bit with the Elite and Jack Perry. There was a bit of a face off there as well. Could it, could it be soon to be like an alignment of a super faction between the Elite and the Baby Blackpool Combat Club? Or is there something that maybe would put them against each other in the future? I'm intrigued by it because part of me thinks they could end up joining together, and part of me thinks they're going to end up coming to blows, but I don't know. I'm sort of in between on it.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's keeping me guessing. Um, Obviously, with in terms of the heel face dynamics, the Young Bucks not defending the company or not
Yeah.
helping the Dark Order and Top Flight,
Oh, Dark Order, I forgot about them.
yeah, totally makes sense that they would step away and but also there was enough in terms of their facial expressions to suggest that maybe we should do something. But they didn't just walk straight out.
No, they
They
took
hung
their
around
time,
on the
didn't they?
ramp and watching it
Yeah.
play out. So I really like that. And then they obviously spoke to them backstage and they kind of played it down. So yeah, whether that leads to a kind of an alliance or whether that leads to all out war, and yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot of this story still to be told, and I think it's going to rumble on for a long time. Um, Interesting how Moxley. I might be wrong, but obviously at WrestleDream they put the AEW title in a bag,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it actually appeared on Dynamite. I don't know if Moxley actually had the title with him. I don't think he did.
No, I don't see. I don't recall.
It was a briefcase, wasn't there? Somebody
It's
was
a
carrying.
briefcase. Yeah, Pack had a briefcase. Yeah.
Maybe it was in there, but yeah, it's yeah, there's a lot of questions still to be answered, and I'm fascinated every time the show starts and Moxley's talking. I really can't wait to hear what he's got to say because he's quite cryptic as well.
Mm.
He's talking in riddles a little bit, and that started the very first week that he came back and he was in the ring with Shivani. So this is obviously something that's not they're not just booking on the fly week to
No.
week. This is something long term, um, that's unfolding. We're seeing piece by piece. Um, so yeah, I like that we kept guessing. I like that we don't know which way the Bucks and the Elite are going to go with it. And yeah, some really good stuff. I really enjoyed this segment.
It'd be interesting because the Elite practically turned on Tony Khan, gave him the Meltzer driver a while back now. And obviously, Moxley seems to be sort of saying that he's burning AEW down because the people there don't fit, kind of him or the mold of the BCC. So that's why I'm kind of thinking, do they go together and form up
Mhm.
again? Maybe the World's End ends with the Elite and the BCC together, because World's End last year ended with the Devil reveal, and generally that pay-per-view I think would seemingly, and it would have set up most of 2024 had Adam Cole not been injured, had MJF not gone injury. I think they would have, and the MJF contract saga as well didn't help that, and I think that would have kind of played into a lot of this year. So perhaps does World's End finish with them 6-7 in the ring? They've decimated AEW, and then perhaps we get a return of Kenny Omega, maybe even Tony Khan makes an appearance to start going into 2025 with the kind of landscape between the two.
Quite possibly, yeah, we could even see something with obviously EVPs.
Yeah.
Perhaps they relinquish their EVP status, they give it to Moxley, or that they intertwine intertwine that story as well in terms of the power of the company. And then you've got Tony Khan and Kenny Omega as another EVP
Mhm.
that are kind of defending AEW. So yeah, there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of stuff they can do with this. And regardless of the story as well, some of the potential matches are fantastic. I mean, we've seen some of them before, like we've seen Mox and Omega, but um, we haven't seen this version of Moxley against a returning Kenny.
No.
Um, and a Kenny that, for one of the few times in the past 10 years or so that he's not aligned with the Bucks, and the way they wrote him off and the way that they kind of, you know, presented the cake to him and covered it with animal guts or whatever it was. You're not going to see Kenny back with the Bucks. That does seem, they're going in a very different
Yeah.
direction there. So, yeah, and who does Kenny bring along with him? Does he bring Ibushi with him? Um, there's so much potential in this story. And I'm enjoying that they're not giving us too much too soon. They
Mm.
are letting it kind of play out slowly week by week and adding more elements to it. And I think Wheeler Yuta as well, I think he's done a great job. Because even though, yeah, he turned on Danielson at the pay-per-view, he looks so uneasy and he looks
Yeah.
so depressed, so conflicted and confused. And I think his performances have been excellent. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing Wheeler Yuta establish himself as a top star, and like Danielson, how Danielson saw him as an equal, not just the
Mm.
young boy, not just the trainee, not just the apprentice, somebody that becomes a top level star. Um, yeah, I think Wheeler Yuta, Daniel Garcia, um, Orange Cassidy, I think they've got a huge future in this new AEW.
Certainly do. I think Darby Allin's going to play like a sting role. I think kind of Moxley wants him. I
Yeah.
do think Moxley wants him into that group. But I'm going to throw a name in there because while we've been talking, and everyone was obviously saying Shane McMahon may be the person. I'm going to throw another name in that mix, and it's not Scott D'Amore because I was to text you earlier on and said he's not under.
Yeah,
He's too
I thought
busy
that's
doing.
where you were going.
No, 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 no. I'm going to throw another name of someone who I think could be in there with Mox. Adam Copeland.
Yeah, yeah.
Is
Yeah, I think he's obviously going to be back at some
yeah.
point, and perhaps we're not going to be seeing him in as many matches moving forward, given the nature of this big
Yeah.
injury as well. He's got matches left in him, don't get me
Oh
wrong,
yeah.
but maybe a bit more story, a bit more of a behind the scenes role, or a, a managerial role as such. Maybe
Mhm.
the face of this faction or this stable is that we still call him the BCC,
Yeah.
and I think Top Flight and Dark Order both did as well, but they
Mm.
did say, or whatever you
Yeah.
call it yourself. So
Yeah.
that's not a given that that's what they're going as now. But
No.
yeah, I think that's a great shout as well. That could be a great way to reintroduce Copeland and get him away from the stuff with Christian, because I'm sure at some point we're going to get an Edge and Christian reunion. Uh,
Yes.
but yeah, in the before that, we could well have him involved with Moxley.
I still have this image of John Silver running after the car in my head.
Yeah, yeah. You heard the live crowd laughing as well when that happened.
Yeah. That is
It
just a
was a
GIF,
great
isn't
scene.
it? That is going to be a GIF. But anyway,
Yeah,
really good segment on that. You touched on it earlier. Shelton Benjamin, Leo Rush. I mean, what a match this was. I mean, look, and this is the kind of thing, right? Because Jericho's only 4 years older than Shelton Benjamin is. You look at this match that Shelton Benjamin has with Leo Rush. The move that got me in this was when he's on the floor, Benjamin's on the floor, Leo Rush is going to dive through, and he literally leaps up off the floor and kicks him in the face, and obviously drops back down to the floor. But Shelton Benjamin is just unbelievable talented. It is a massive get from AEW. He was never going to lose this match. Let's be real. It was his first match. Hurt Syndicate. He was never going to lose it. But he done a great job. MVP puts the Hurt Syndicate card in his pocket. I'll tell you who I think is going to join it in a minute. But man, Shelton Benjamin just he's like a fine wine, that bloke, isn't he?
yeah. And I've got to be honest, when towards the back end of his run in WWE, when him and whose team with Cedric and they were just losing a lot, and I really had lost interest in Shelton Benjamin. Um, but then when he's coming to AEW and he's having this match with Leo Rush, I'm thinking back to those matches he had, with the likes of Randy Orton and people when he was the
Yeah,
gold standard and that Intercontinental title run, and going back to when he was with Charlie Haas and the world's
yeah.
greatest tag team, and some of the great matches he had as both part of that tag team and as a singles competitor. And at 49, he just doesn't look like he's lost a step. He looked also, he looked a star in this
Yeah.
match, and he's reminded people just how good he is. And if there were any doubts about him, or if he had lost some of his shine because of how he was booked towards the end of his WWE run, he's shown here that he's still a top level athlete, a top performer, and it just opens up the potential for so many more great matches. I'm sure we're going to get one with him and Swerve. Um, but there's so many matches now that I think about as potential matches for Shelton. A few weeks ago, I wouldn't have even considered it. He wasn't somebody I was thinking about. He wasn't
Mm.
somebody that I wanted to see in the company. But yeah, off the back of this match, what a way to introduce himself to the AEW fan base.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. Funny enough, Swerve was backstage. He did sort of say challenge accepted any time, any place. That match is happening in 2 weeks' time on Dynamite, which is going to be a Fright Night Dynamite. I think it's going to be
Yeah,
Halloween. That's my opinion when Bobby Lashley debuts.
yeah.
That's what I think. But the person that I think is going to join that group, well, it's either going to be his group, that group, or Swerve's group. And you mentioned him earlier on, is Will Hobbs. That's the person I think is going to join either the Hurt Syndicate or he'll join Swerve, and there'll be again. We may as well call this faction wars because that's where we're leading at the moment. There's lots of factions in this AEW to me, which is fine. We're going to get into another faction very second, but yeah, my view is Will Hobbs will join one of the two groups, and Lashley will debut in 2 weeks. He's already signed for AEW. That's that done, dusted. Contracts, signed, sealed, delivered. So I would imagine he would probably better off joining Swerve in the nature of the fact that they've already got, if they're going to have Lashley, if you get Hobbs in there, does it really work? Maybe it works of having him with Swerve just because two big men in there. But that's my thing anyway. That's where I think it's going.
Yeah, yeah. As you say, I mean, I think he still is alone with Don Callis at the minute. So,
Mhm.
but we've saw trades as well as we saw with Jay Roberts and
Yeah.
Shin LFI. So, yeah, I've always enjoyed factions in wrestling, and AEW have always had a lot of factions.
Yeah.
They do multi-man matches so good. Some of the stories they're telling have been great. We're getting this slow drip feed of the Hurt Syndicate. I don't know what Cedric Alexander's status is. I'm pretty sure he was released from WWE though, wasn't he?
He's re-signed. He's I
Oh,
think
is he
I think he
re-signed?
recently re-upped another contract. Yeah, I
Oh, okay.
think. me check that while you carry on.
Yeah. So perhaps we're not going to see Cedric. Obviously, people we saw it as part of what were they called? The Hurt
Her
Locker,
business.
Hurt Business,
Yeah.
Hurt Locker film, I think.
Hurt
Um,
Locker.
yeah, yeah. We saw MVP, we saw Lashley, we saw Cedric, we saw Shelton. So yeah, it's going to be a different, maybe perhaps no Cedric in AEW, but definitely other people that potentially will be coming. They'll be part of it. You know, we saw Leo Rush get a business card. We saw Mercedes get a business card last week or the week before.
Yeah.
So it's not you're not necessarily just male talent that MVP's recruiting for his faction. Um, so yeah, with the introduction of women into these factions as well, that's more different dynamic, particularly when you got Marina Shafir doing such good work next to Moxley. You know,
Mm.
is there a situation where we get a person match and it's got a representative from both the men and the women's division from each faction? You know, there's a lot of stuff they can do. You find anything about Cedric?
Yes, he re-signed in September
Okay.
for a multi-year contract. So he's happy doing jobs, basically.
Yeah, yeah, which is a bit of a shame in some respects, but
I always feel like Kevin Owens is the latest one that's apparently it's done, just not inked. So he's going to be re-signing. His contract was up at the end of the year, and he's apparently it's done in terms of re-sign, which is was one of those ones that I could have thought could have gone either way with Owens. And I think now it's whether or not they're just comfortable doing what they're doing, and maybe the change isn't what, do they want to go and reinvent themselves somewhere else? And some of them do, and we've seen it. I just think perhaps comfortability, and they're not really going to be doing. I don't think that we're going to be seeing like massive releases in WWE like we've seen in the past. I don't think that's
no.
going to happen as much, and mainly I think because AEW is around, to be quite frank. But yeah, Cedric's staying, Kevin Owens is staying as well. The only other one that's got a contract coming up for expiring again, I want to say at the end of the year, the start of maybe next year, is AJ Styles. So
Yeah.
I thought the contract he signed with the last was going to be his last one, but we'll have to wait and see. But no, Cedric won't be joining. AEW.
Yeah. And I think in WWE they don't do as many dates as they used to do. It's a bit more comfortable, it's a bit
Yeah,
more I think it's Punk that said in an interview fairly recently that they can actually like just book days off,
yeah, yeah,
regardless of, you
yeah,
know, the days of saying, yeah, you can't have this time off, you've got to
yeah,
work, or yeah, you've gone seemingly. Triple H has obviously, I think he's got three daughters himself.
yeah, yeah.
Wants he wants the guys and girls to have that family time, and yeah, they don't do all the house shows they used to do.
Cutting
So
back on them as well next year, cutting back on house shows, which is actually kind of split
yeah,
the locker room a little bit because obviously I suppose a house show is another attempt to sell your merch, right? I suppose. And
yeah, yeah,
but in another way, you've got to look at it from the family perspective, from a body perspective as well. You don't want to be working these dates, and you do want to be rested. But I suppose I get it if you're a younger talent and you haven't got the family and you just want to earn your money and make more money, then it does kind of hinder you. But ultimately, I think when we said, and we talked about it with Demolition, they're taking a lot more care with the wrestlers now. And I think that's a big thing because limited dates, cutting back on the house shows. AEW don't do house shows for that example. They did house rules, I think, for a few months or so, but they're
yeah.
looking after the wrestlers more, which is a good thing. And ultimately, who's going to prolong careers, you would hope.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And the lighter schedule, if you like, in AEW, doesn't really exist now in terms of when you're comparing the two companies.
Yeah.
It's much more aligned. Um, so yeah, perhaps in the past, given the schedule, people would look to leave WWE and join AEW. But the likes of Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, and others who've got friends and people that they know well, people that they used to be in Ring of Honor with over in AEW. We spoke about it at length last year or the year before when we thought Owens might be going over, and there was different
True.
tweets about the Young Bucks Drew. Yeah, it's not a given, but it's great to keep us guessing, and it's great that there's that potential there. But um, yeah, I think Kevin Owens has got a little bit a little bit more left in him in terms of his WWE run. AJ Styles is an interesting one though.
Mm.
AJ Styles is interesting, because if he is going to go to AEW, and he is going to have those kind of big matches on American TV against the likes of Kenny Omega, against the likes of MJF, Adam Cole, maybe. People like Takeshita, people like Will Ospreay. You
Cool.
know, I don't know
I
if Ospreay AJ. I don't know if that happened in Japan. It
think it
may,
happened in England. I think.
yeah, but we certainly haven't seen it on on television
No.
on a big scale. So AJ's probably like looking at how long he's got left in terms of his full-time career, and if that's something that he'd want to do as well. Samoa Joe,
Wait, oh
matches
yeah, he's got.
AJ and Samoa Joe kind of at a time. They when we're looking back at the early days of TNA, or
Mm.
not just the early days of TNA, it would be a shame if we didn't get one more Samoa Joe AJ Styles match at some point, and you would think AEW would be the place to make that happen. So yeah, that's the one for me. That would be really interesting to see what AJ decides to do.
Yeah, we'll find out very soon. But you mentioned a couple of names there that, well, we were talking about a couple of names. Where Don Callis family mentioned Takeshita, a new international champion, and they done a trade last week, which did see Lance Archer, who was looking a bit like 2018 Drew McIntyre, this week on
Yes, got rid of
AEW.
his braids, isn't
Yeah, it said it did look like Drew McIntyre. If
he?
you had to double take it.
Yeah.
And now they've acquired Brian Cage, Jake Roberts, seemingly acquiring LFI. Get your views on that in a minute. Obviously, Carl Fletcher, Takeshita there. We've all spoke about this. We've all agreed. Gary Joe's even agreed that they didn't really know how to book the big men. Seemingly having problems booking the big men. Brian Cage winning the Ring of Honor Television Championship this week. Lance Archer aligning him, well, being aligned with Don Callis. I'm quite excited about this because for years we've been saying push Brian Cage, push Lance Archer because we know what they can do in that ring. This could be very, very interesting going forward if they use Cage and Archer like we know that they can do. That this could be quite an impressive force they've got going here with Don Callis.
Yeah, yeah, and Don did kind of say about them going after tag gold. Well, I don't know if he was
Yeah.
referring to Ring of Honor gold or AEW tag gold, but we're obviously going to see them form a team as well within the faction. It's just great to be seeing Lance Archer and Brian Cage on Dynamite and see them
Yeah.
involved in some proper stories and hopefully pick up some wins as well. Cage winning that title. Hopefully that's a line in the sand and we're going to see the best of him. Because again, similar to what I said about Brian Keith, you know, so Brian Cage has been defeated too many times. He's been pinned too many
Yeah.
times, given his talent, given his size. Um, yeah, so being involved in a faction with Don Callis, I like that. There's obviously, I would imagine that Don Callis has got um, a bit of stroke in terms of who he aligns with, and who is part of his faction and who he's putting over essentially. And I'm glad that Lance Archer and Brian Cage are two of those people now. There's Trent as well, which I think he's
Yeah.
in again,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
he's aligned with Don Callis as well. But yeah, just that image of those four big guys. I mean, Fletcher, he's a tall dude and he's put some weight on and put some muscle mass on. And I think they look like a real impressive unit. And glad Takeshita got the goal. I didn't expect that to happen, by the way. If I'd have predicted WrestleDream, I would have probably predicted that Ospreay walks out with the international title. So I really enjoyed what they did there, and I enjoyed the fact that Takeshita's got singles gold in the company.
No, yeah, you would have been wrong then. Me and Gary Joe predicted that exactly what happened at
Ah,
Wrestle.
yeah, yeah,
We both said that Carl Fletcher's going to cost Will Ospreay the gold in it.
yeah.
We thought it was Takeshita's time, and it seemingly is, and fair play, which is good.
Yeah, I think because there was a few turns going on, I
Yeah.
expected Wheeler to be involved at the end. I perhaps thought that they might hold off a little bit on Kyle.
Mm.
Ultimately, it was going to come. But yeah, I didn't expect it to happen when it did. I thought Ospreay would win that triple threat. So yeah, for Takeshita to be the man to pick up the gold, I don't know how you feel about Ricochet and what they've done with him so far in the company. I mean, he hasn't lost, but again, I would imagine a few people quite underwhelmed with his run so far. Um, but but yeah, the positives there is Takeshita. You know, for a long time we've spoke about him and saw him as an absolute stud, as like a top
Yeah.
star within the company. So as somebody that, you know, is going to be at the very top of the card, somebody that they can rely on and trust to have awesome matches every time he steps in the ring. So I'm glad he has become the new international champion.
Yeah, me too. Coincidentally, Ricochet had an open challenge for Collision. It's been answered by AR Fox, someone else who we haven't seen in a while. That's going to be taping tonight. Clinton's taping tonight for AEW. The Clay, I think they're taping Battle of the Belts as well tonight. A match made on Rampage for Rampage this week was made just after that, actually, and that's going to be Anna Jay going up against Mariah May, which would be quite interesting. Anna Jay, a good run in Japan, so we'll see how that does. But we get to the main event of the evening. Jay White and the Gun was with the Gun Club and your good pal. I'm going to start calling him your uncle or something. Juice Robinson going against Christian Page, who was with Nick Wayne, Mama Wayne. Uh, really good main event. Kip Sabian getting involved, which was quite a surprise. He was kind of, I don't really know, he was in trying to distract Christian Cage at one point. And
Yeah,
right,
who watch this? There was a timing issue here.
yeah. And
It
then
and turned up and then hid for a bit and then come back out and they redid it. I don't know. It just
yeah, I'm not quite
bonkers.
sure because he seemingly made Christian Cage do like was head, got on the ropes for that. And then at the end, obviously Hangman had come out mid-match, and then Kip Sabian gets back on the apron just as Jay White's going to hit the Blade Runner, which then makes the ref look away, which then gives Hangman the chance to hit the box shot lariat on Jay White and then hide exactly the same way that Christian hid in his match when he helped Hangman Page win on Collision. I can't remember if that was against Jay White or somebody else, but they hid in exactly the same way. Hangman looking like he's in bed and he's heard a noise in the downstairs of his house. But again, setting up Christian for another win there, but intensifying the feud with Jay White and Hangman that's ultimately going to keep on going. They had their match at WrestleDream. It's obviously not over between those two. Maybe at Full Gear we'll have another one, but a good way to end. It's got a lot more. We've got a lot of meat on the bones this week, I feel, for Dynamite, and going forward, it's looking very promising for what they're doing.
Yeah, a bit of continuation in terms of stuff that you know, she say. Um, there's more to come. You know, it's not the end of the feud. We've got some continuation there, but we got some new stuff, and we can, you know, they're going to keep us guessing as well with some of the stories and how it develops and who's involved and what matches we're going to get at the end of it and who's going to be involved. So I think it was really a really good episode of Dynamite. I think in terms of the women's contribution this week was a little bit weak. We got the
Yeah,
one match with Mercedes. As we say, it was passable. It was okay. We had a little bit with Anna Jay in the back. We had Mariah May. I thought Mariah May cut a really, really good promo. I enjoyed that. I'd like to see her on the show a little bit more, you know, a bit more prominently.
yeah.
You know, really establishing herself as the top woman in the company. Prior to Tony coming back, I think whether they will hold off until Australia for that or whether she'll be back sooner, not sure.
Doing
I
CMLL
expect,
stuff, isn't she?
yeah, I think Tony will ultimately win the title in Australia at Grand Slam. I think they'll give it because they AEW are big on that. Tony Khan is big on giving wrestlers from their hometown or home country their moment. We saw those Wembley moments. You know, we've seen it in the past at you know, New York, Eddie Kingston. You know, they do that very, very well. And I think Tony Storm is going to be a huge part of the show when it rolls around in February. But yeah, I think Mariah May is doing a really good job as champion, but we need to see a bit more of her. We need to see a bit more of her, and yeah, I think the in terms of the women's division, it wasn't the strongest week in terms
Mhm.
of content, but overall, a really, really good episode of Dynamite, and I'm looking forward to Collision, and I'm looking forward to the next few weeks of Dynamite. So not just have we got stuff for next week in terms of the ladder match, we've got the Swerve Shelton match for the following week. So
Yeah.
the pacing's really good. We've got 4 weeks or so before Full Gear. And I think that's going to be, as AEW usually does with pay-per-views, I think that's going to be a really strong card.
Yeah, and after Full Gear, we'll go straight into the C2, which is going to be even better. But funny enough, something has just AEW have just tweeted that apparently hookers tracked down the security footage for who attacked Taz. Well, we all know Taz has had to have knee surgery, but the storyline is that, and he's ready to handle business this Wednesday on Dynamite. I've got a feeling it was him that attacked
Yeah.
him. Yeah, I think it's like it's a way of kind of getting Hook out of the shadow of who his dad is, and Hook wants to carve his own legacy. So for me, Hook has attacked his dad just to break away. That's how I other than that, who's it going to be other than that? I don't
Mm.
know.
Hopefully not Jericho and the Learning Tree.
Oh fuck it.
Like,
Unless it costs Jericho the ladder match.
yeah, I suppose. Yeah, again, another little story. Like there's a lot going on, a lot going on. They're doing
Yeah.
a good job of, getting a lot of characters over a lot. And even if we're not seeing him every week, we're kind of seeing him every other week. They're managing the roster pretty well. Um, yeah, how it looks towards the end of the year when we lose Rampage, I don't think anything too significant really happens on Rampage these days. Um, so perhaps just kind of cutting that out, having the focus on the two weekly shows and more pay-per-views is the way to go, and more international pay-per-views to kind of go full circle and finish off where we started in terms of the international markets. I'm sure just like the WWE has in recent years and AEW has now with the UK shows and Australia shows, I'm sure there's going to be more and more countries kind of conquered, explored, bringing new fans in and also fans like I think AEW got a decent following in Germany as well. And,
Yeah.
you know, Germany fully deserve a show and there's so much potential. There's so many places they can go and visit, put on great shows. Yeah, as we've said for a long time, great time to be a wrestling fan and it continues to be so.
Indeed, it does. We will wrap it up right there. It's been a great review, as always. Big thanks to our guest this week. As we said, Demolition's video is out. Go and check that out. Go and not you, Dave. I haven't thanked you
I
yet.
know, I
Give it a
know.
minute. Hold on a minute.
I thought he was getting to me.
Well,
Oh,
I'm not going to thank you now. I'm going to just tell you to fuck off. But no, big thanks to Demolition this week. Big thanks to Vince Russo last week. That was an incredible interview with them. Demolition were great. Eric Bischoff is coming up next week. A deep dive into WCW. Really looking forward to that. Layla is also coming up in a couple of weeks as well, former Divas champion. So a lot going on the channel. HTTB hit the road this weekend. Myself and Rachel will be attending Get my words out. RCWA Wrestling over in Raynham on Saturday, featuring a ladder match at their Halloween show. The very next day, we're hopping on a train and going over to Cardiff to go and see Slam Masters, where we'll see Eric Young and TNA's new Hall of Famer, Rhino, will be there as well. So we're looking forward to going and seeing those as well. But now I can say thank you, Dave. It was good to
No,
see.
no, I'm not saying goodbye, no, mate. You've upset me.
Well, I was literally going to say, as it's the AEW stuff, and you haven't done it in a few weeks, and if you can serenade us, I will serenade you with a Jim Cornette first. Thank you, fuck you, bye. After you get in there, trying to steal the limelight off Demolition, all because they're not Hall of Famers yet. But anyway, as it is AEW, and a big thank you again for you joining us again. It's great to have you back on the show as always. But please serenade us off as you do so well.
Well, it's time to bid you all adieu, goodbye, mwah, and good night. Bang, bang.
Stanley, everybody.